Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. Uh, as some of you have mentioned in the chat, this is the first JR stream in many years, so welcome. I'm gonna be trying to figure out settings and stuff for a lot of this because I'm sure it's not all gonna be perfect. High tide's down. I'm just gonna go top down until I can find somebody to jam with. Just gonna post in the Discord looking for an opponent. But for now, I'll talk about some decks. I just updated the Stream Decker, I think, with the deck I'm gonna play tonight. It's like a Bant clones deck. Should be pretty fun. Oh, there we go. Now I think it's fixed. Now I think it should be updated. Yeah. Except it shouldn't have 2 Wall of Roots or 2 Wall of Blossoms. So just imagine it's 100 cards and it doesn't have any doubles. Yeah, 4-color Blood's definitely still good. I'm going to talk about some of the decks I have built on Moto, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them or just chat. So this is one of my favorite decks, and it's definitely a Jer Brew. This is Bant Blink. If you watched Friday Night Paper Fight a few Highlander streams ago, I played it, and it was super fun to play. I got to send Ben to the darkest depths of the Shadow Realm by Palace Jailering 6 creatures in a single match. That was super fun. The deck is actually a lot more competitive than it looks. It's got a lot of game against just about everything against combo. Thanks. Yeah, I really like that. The North 100 episodes where we get to go a little bit more in depth. Those episodes always favor me a little bit more, I think. I haven't quite figured out my alerts yet, so I'll try to stay on top of them. So thanks everyone who's following. I'll shout them out when I get them, but I'm likely to miss some. I'm still new at this, so get good cheesecake, DJ, Lifton Live, the Man Leak. Oh, thanks. Yeah, always good to see you around. The Tunneling Cat, that's another name I know. Lord of Jund, Amused Griffin, and Distazo. Thanks for following. Yeah, there's no Schley in this deck. She's definitely one that could get in because keeping your creatures having hexproof is definitely valuable. In this deck, I just went for more of like an absolute value take and tried to make 1-for-1 removal worse. Lower on the curve and absolute haymakers. I have some that are weak to 1-for-1 removal, but early on, especially, I wanted all my creatures except for the Mana Dorks to be really good against 1-for-1 removal. So you'll notice that they all have an Enter the Battlefield ability or leave a body behind in the case of Voice of Resurgence. And other than that, I wanted most of the lower end creatures to just blank or make 1-for-1 removal look pretty bad. And it's also really easy to hold up either like Cloud Shift or Essence Flux or something to protect your creatures later on. But yeah, Shalai is definitely a reasonable include in this deck, but I think it's better in the Bant Clones deck, for example. That should be in my Stream Decker if it worked correctly. Anybody have any questions on this deck? I'll move on to the next deck if nobody has any questions. Still waiting for a match. So hopefully we can find one soon. Nimble Obstructionist doesn't really fit into this style of deck. Nimble Obstructionist fits into more of a deck where you're either more tempo oriented, so the cycling ability really matters, like, or where you really want to hold up your mana each turn, and so having a 3/1 flash matters, or you're able to activate the ability. This deck pretty much taps out every time, uh, you just want to be using your mana every turn. You'll often even cast things like Restoration Angel on your main phase if they're tapped out, just so you're able to ensure you're able to get the value from the enter the battlefield ability. So basically every turn you're tapping out. Like sometimes you won't be if you have Selfless Squire, or sometimes you'll hold Resto just to protect your creature if you're ahead, and you'll obviously hold up Venser for their turn. But the vast majority of the time, this deck you're just tapping out, so it's not really where Nimble Obstructionist wants to be, and you don't get a lot of value because like flickering it doesn't really do anything for you. It's an individually good card, but just not for this synergy based deck. I've really liked Selfless Squire, the Tunneling Cat. The fact that it prevents all damage is really, really exciting. So you can blank like their end of Price of Progress. I've done that before. I've blanked Escape Shift with it. Like, it has a lot of uses just outside of being a fog that potentially cracks back and wins you the game. Yeah, that's one of the things I'm excited about doing in that Bant Clones deck, is cloning this Archon of Valor's Reach. So one of the things I was able to do in this Blink deck was reset the mode that it's on. So I noticed that was really valuable if they were like, I set it on Artifact and they found a Dak Faden and were able to start discarding all their artifacts, or I set it on Sorcery and they were able to like leverage some instants, and then being able to blink it and switch mode was really valuable. So one of the things I want to be able to do with the clone deck is to be able to get a bunch of these and set them on different modes, and hopefully lock my opponent pretty far out of the game that way. How's my mic volume? Is my mic volume all right? I tried to test as much as I could before I fired off the first stream, but let me know if any of the settings need to be changed or anything. Using something like Displacer to bounce it in response to the target of a Snapcaster or something like that seems pretty decent. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, and this deck also just plays like a pretty powerful mid-range game. Like, you're really good against red with all the sort of derpy creatures you have in the way. You have things like Reflector Mage and Kitchen Finks and Knight of Autumn, which are just their absolute worst nightmares, along with Stoneforge to get GT. The walls are surprisingly good as well, like Wall of Roots, Wall of Blossoms, Wall of Omens are all really good. And then they'll often set up their turns so they only want to cast one removal spell in a turn. And because they'll often want to bank removal spells to fire them upstairs. So using your blink spells to force them to use 2 removal spells on one creature is also super valuable in the burn matchup. And this is a deck that actually gets to play Obstinate Baloth. A lot of the mid-range decks have been cutting it recently just because it's good, but the lack of second body sort of blanks it in a lot of matchups. Like, it doesn't do a lot against control, doesn't do a lot against other mid-range decks where the 4 life just isn't that big of a deal, whereas Thragtusk and Kitchen Finks both have a second body to make them a lot more impactful in those matchups. And so a deck that actually gets to utilize Obstinate Baloth more to warrant its inclusion in the deck just improves your red matchup even more. If you have a lot of aggressive decks in your meta, if you play, this is a deck I would wholeheartedly recommend. Yeah, this is hashtag the jail is full. Just this deck just smashes aggro and has good game against other mid-range decks as well. And it gets to play some of the cards that I think are actually just really underplayed in the format. Like, I think this card is still underplayed. Like, I'm really surprised that the White Hoof decks aren't playing this instead of in the Rorkthar slot yet. Like, it hoses a lot of the combo decks. Like, Storm can't win without casting sorceries, so if you have this on sorcery, it's very, very difficult for them to win the game. Not stone cold impossible, but very difficult. I think Keeper of the Keys is also a super underrated card, especially if you're able to protect it, which you are to some extent in this deck. Just so many games are won just by the fact that you're like, oh, I kept the Monarch for a turn, all my creatures are unblockable, you're dead. Just like having underplayed cards like that, and people misplay against these cards. Like, people, especially high under players who have played for years, aren't used to playing against cards that they don't recognize, and they'll often misplay against them the first few times you see them. So you get a lot of points just by playing cards that people don't recognize and are sort of cause people to play the game weirdly. Like Selfless Squire is another one that no one in the format is going to play around. Like, it's sort of similar to Comeuppance and Settle the Wreckage, that are similar type cards, but they'll never expect them out of this deck. And I've won a few games on Magic Online just by making what seems like a bad attack. I think we have enough. It's possible we don't have the full amount. So there's 2 for Mana Crypt, 3 for Soul Ring, that brings us to 5, 2 for Jite, 1 for Stoneforge. And then we have a Survival is the last 2. This deck's worst matchup is definitely all-in combo. You have very few tools to beat combo decks. You're basically really reliant on things like Aven Mind Sensor, Knight of Autumn if it's has a relevant ability, or Archon. You don't have a lot of tutors to find them either. So yeah, combo in general is just a bad matchup. Like, even Hoof isn't a great matchup. Like, you don't have a lot of ways to stop what they're doing. Yeah, Storm and Academy are also bad matchups. Academy's better because you can sometimes set up Knight, and then this deck is actually really good at just reusing Knight and Rec Sage a lot. Like, it's not unusual for this deck to be able to get like 5 or 6 shatter effects out of Knight or Rec Sage by turn 6. So like, if you have a good draw, that matchup is winnable. But like, Hoof and Storm are really, really bad. Excuse me, just grabbing some water. All right, I'm gonna move on to Jeskai. I might try to chop these up and post them as deck text later if I have time. So this is a little older Jeskai build. This is, I think, the same Jeskai build that I brought down to the Mox Boarding House towards the end of last year. Liam, Ben, and I all were playing that. And then Ben and I both played it a few times later on in the season. Ben was pretty heavily considering playing this deck for the top 16 this year. This one's a little more control slanted than mid-range, so it's sort of on the fence between a mid-range and a control deck. But it's sort of good at playing either role. I've talked about this a few times, and that the combination of both the white and the red cards enable you to play the beatdown way better than a lot of the other blue mid-range or control decks. Like, you get some early creatures, you get the burn spells, so you're able to pivot faster, and the white cards, a few of the white cards just enable you to just put your foot down so fast. Like, Gideon and Monastery Mentor are the biggest ones that just enable you to, all right, I'll tap out this one turn, and then the next turn it's just full on aggro. Yeah, definitely. Mentor with burn spells is a really good way to close games. Same with Gideon plus counter spells. Yeah, it is a fancy mana leak. So in paper, I have the version of the card that I like the best, but in Magic Online, I just bought whatever the cheapest version was, because I have all these cards on paper. I'm lucky enough to have a substantial paper Magic collection, and so when I bought into Magic Online, I just bought whatever the cheapest version of the card was at the time, and sometimes it ended up being like a fancy version. Like the cheapest version of Cryptic Command was the Invocations, which I'm definitely not a fan of, but if I'm saving a few bucks every time I buy one of those, then, you know, gotta do what you gotta do. So this deck doesn't really have any great bad matchups. It doesn't have any great matchups, doesn't have any bad matchups, but it's sort of 55 to 60% against a bunch of decks, and it has a couple 45% matchups. Like, I think this deck, one of this deck's worst matchups is actually High Tide. Not too many people play it, but I mostly know it from the High Tide side, and I'm definitely happy to see a slower blue deck when I'm playing High Tide, just because you'll usually get time to set up. It's hard for them to clock you fast enough, and they just have a bunch of like bad removal spells in their deck that essentially don't do anything. And a lot of the time they'll have to tap out for their threats, which lets you resolve either a key tutor or just win. All right, I'm gonna catch up on some follows. Lava Shot 449, thanks for following. Drewbag 4, Brubaka, Silver Knight, and AJ Halonen 1. All thanks for following. Really appreciate everyone hanging out and chatting. We're talking about Jeskai midrange right now. Just talked about Bant Blink. We're talking about the difference between Jeskai and some of the other mid-range control blue decks like Grixis and Esper. So the advantage that Jeskai gets is that it's able to turn the corner a bit faster, and its best matchups are typically the aggro decks, because the white cards, if you want to add them, typically make your aggro matchups better. You get more removal spells early on with Path and Swords. You get a bunch of the life gain cards with War Leader's Helix and Lightning Helix, and Soulfire Grandmaster is another huge source of life gain for the deck. If an aggro deck can't remove it, it's often just game over. Awesome, thanks to hear that, spicy napalm. I'm excited to try to get back into streaming. It was sort of perfect timing. My buddy Adam did a bunch of artwork for my stream. He's the same guy who did the Highlander logo you see on all the official Highlander pages. And if you've seen me or Pat or Adam Thorne out at a tournament, our Highlander mats, all the artwork was done by Adam, the same person who did the artwork for my stream. So I was really excited to get him to do that. But I really like Jeskai. It's probably, I don't know whether this or Esper is my favorite mid-range deck to play. Jeskai's probably a little better right now, just because it really hedges up those aggressive matchups, which is something you're really looking to do when you play mid-range. You want to be able to have access to the blue cards to beat the combo decks and to fight other blue decks, but you really want to make sure you're not losing to the aggro decks. Sorry, is Restoration Angel here mostly as a flash threat? Yeah, you're not really too worried about getting value out of the Restoration Angel in this deck. You're often just casting it as the only creature on board. In certain matchups that are really value oriented. Yeah, I'll do that, Brubaka. Thanks. That's a great question. You're in a few matchups where you're really value oriented. You might try to save Restoration Angel to blink, like a Direfleet Daredevil or your Snapcaster. But honestly, there's not even that many enter the battlefield abilities in this deck. So like, you're banking it on. There's only, let's see, there's Snapcaster, Direfleet Daredevil, Spellseeker, Vendilion Cleek, Torrential Gearhulk, and Inferno Titans. That's only 5 or 6. And the chances of those two lining up aren't super high. So yeah, most of the time it's just a flash threat. So moving on to Brubaka's question. The points in this deck, we have Ancestral Recall, which is the bulk of the points. That's 7 out of 10. Uh, at the time, you really just wanted this just to shore up blue matches and combo matches, which is the same reason we're playing Spellseeker, which is also a point. Okay, this is an older version before Spellseeker got pointed. So this version's a little outdated because right now this is at 11. So we have Recall at 7, Mana Drain at 1, Spellseeker at 1, Dig at 1, and Cruise at 1. Out of this deck, I'd cut either Mana Drain or Cruise to make it back down to 10. Probably Treasure Cruise. You just want the really high concentration of 2 mana counter spells in this deck. That's pretty important. Yeah, so those are the points I'd go for. You really just want your points to be really hard hitting all the time, which sort of goes against Mana Drain. I've sort of been on record as saying I don't think Mana Drain should necessarily be a point. I still have that view, though I'm sort of getting turned around to it. Part of the reason is that decks like this rarely take advantage of the broken aspect of Mana Drain. They're rarely using the mana, and oftentimes when they do, it's just incorrect or like provides very minimal value. Like if you're using one of that mana to cast a Vendilion Click on your main phase, it's like, sure, that's not worth a point. But sometimes when you do get to use the mana, like if you're accelerating out an early Inferno Titan and still get to keep mana up, it is often game winning. So I'm turning around a little on my stance on Mana Drain. I'm still not all the way there yet, but yeah, in decks like these, you just really want your points to be hard hitting and often flexible. So that's why Dig Through Time is better than Treasure Cruise in this deck, just because in this deck you're often looking for specific answers, specific cards to fill in your hand. Like sometimes you'll have removal spells, and you'll want counter spells to sort of shore up your hand and make sure nothing's going to go too wrong, or you just really need a threat to end the game. And Dig Through Time is better at finding what you need as opposed to just the raw card advantage of Treasure Cruise. And Ancestral Recall is just so good in this deck. You have a couple ways to recur it in Jace Vryn's Prodigy and Snapcaster Mage, and you have Spellseeker to find it. I was so impressed with Spellseeker in this deck, not only just because it gets Ancestral Recall, because it also, like, I tutored for Swords to Plowshares a bunch, I tutored for Pact of Negation a bunch, I even tutored for Fire Ice one time to ice down a Merit Lodge, because both of my Path and Swords were in the bin, or maybe just my Path was, and I was winning the game that turn, so I could ice down the Merit Lodge to win. But next question on Jeskai. Teferi. I've definitely played Teferi in this deck. This list is from just about when Teferi got printed, so I wasn't willing to put it in right away. Awesome, thanks Joker Boney. Thanks for coming out. Teferi is totally viable and great in this deck. I cut Gideon Ally of Zendikar for him, and I think that's a totally reasonable choice. You're right, Tunneling Cat. You can't find Fire Ice, but doesn't change the fact that Spellseeker is a really awesome, great utility card in this deck. Bottom 5 cards in the deck cuttable. Yeah, I'll go through those. So I think Censor is pretty cuttable in this deck. It's been in and out of my lists. I think that I've actually been cutting Jace from a few of my blue mid-range lists. Jace Fringe Prodigy. I haven't been as stoked on it. It's really bad against Karakas and often just dies to the first removal spell they have. And it really incentivizes you to tap out on turn 2, which is not something you always want to do. As opposed to something like Thing in the Ice that has 4 toughness and wins the game a lot better than Jace does. Because something I found is that a lot of the times, even when you flip Jace, it only provides you like minimal advantage. If your opponent has really big creatures, it's all right, but still not great. And then if your opponent has lots of small creatures, it's going to fog one of the creatures, but not all of them. And so you're still going to end up taking a bunch of damage. So if you get to flashback a couple spells, it's all right, but it's rarely winning you the game by itself, which is really something you want from a lot of the creatures and planeswalkers, or just things you need to tap out for on your own turn. So I haven't been super impressed with Jace. I'd cut Treasure Cruise because we're over points right now. I think Ojadai's command is pretty cuttable. It's a little niche. It is very powerful when it comes off, but often if you're just drawing a card and gaining 4, it's like not really worthwhile. I think Aven Mind Sensor is pretty cuttable in this deck. It's another creature that doesn't necessarily win the game by itself. You already have a reasonable combo game with all your disruption in the form of counter spells and your ability to find counter spells. So like, and in non-combo matchups, it can be a bit of a liability if you're drawing one of your threats and it's just a 2/1 flyer with no additional abilities. Those are probably the bottom 5 cards for me in this deck. You could definitely cut one of the 6s as well if your meta's pretty quick, but I liked having a lot of the 6s a lot. These cards often all just win the game on the spot when you cast them, or not necessarily on the spot, but like if you get to untap with any of these, you're probably winning. And Torrential Gearhulk is obviously has flash, so it's very easy to untap with, and gets you value immediately. So the bottom 5 cards for me in this deck are probably Censor, Jace Vryn's Prodigy, Treasure Cruise. Well, Treasure Cruise isn't a bottom 5 card, but we're just over points, so that is the one I would cut. And Aven Mind Sensor. I think all the other cards just are too good at their job, or are too necessary to the deck in order to cut. Gonna go down and try to find the next question. Mana Tithe. Mana Tithe isn't really what this deck is looking for. It's a sweet getcha card, but you really want the games to go long, and something like Miscalculation is barely good enough for the deck in my opinion. And Censor, which cycle, so they're not dead late game. So yeah, I don't think this is the deck for Mana Tithe. Wheeler posted about Sol Ring. There's definitely a chance Sol Ring goes up. We're actually having an election tonight for the new council. Both Ben and I are running for re-election. And a bunch of the councilors are campaigning to have Sol Ring up to 4 points. I am not. I don't think Sol Ring is too good at 3. However, virtually everyone is campaigning to up Mana Crypt to 3. So it seems pretty likely at this point that Mana Crypt will likely be going up in the next month or so. Next question. Is this a list I consider playing New Ral in? Probably not. I've played New Ral a bunch in Blue Moon, and I really like Ral in that deck. It's definitely not unreasonable to play New Ral in this deck. It is the sort of thing we're looking for. I just think Teferi is a better option if you have the option available, and I'm not certain you want both. So that's what I think of New Ral in this deck. Direfleet Daredevil, that card's really good. How do you decide when to tap out for a threat rather than holding up counter magic or other answers? So it depends a bit on what you think your opponent is doing. If you think your opponent is a very aggressive deck, it's often better to just sandbag your threat and deal with their things until you either have no more answers or they have no more things. So it's however, against combo, you really want to try to get a threat in as soon as possible, even if you think there's a chance you're gonna lose the game on your next turn. It's it's super context related, that question. When to tap out, when to not tap out. Maybe we'll try to hit it up in an episode of North 100. That's a really good question. Yeah, definitely Gearhulk casting Think Through Time definitely ends a lot of games. Yeah, that's another good point. The Tunneling Cat is that Ral is another thing that's good at dealing with big creatures, whereas white, when you're already playing white, you have less weakness to big creatures than Blue Moon does. All right, I'm gonna catch up on some more follows. Hermitat HS, thanks for following. Atheist Santa, Pentatonic Penguin, that's a sweet username, thanks for following. And the G Money 041, thanks for following. All right, I'm gonna move on to one of my pet decks, one of the decks I was able to popularize in the format, Scape Shift. This is the 4-color Bring to Light version with black cards. One of the decks I have on Magic Online is Jeskai Control. The deck I'm playing tonight should be the current deck on my Stream Decker. Hopefully, if you type in !deck, there's a link to that. Somebody can test that out, maybe. !deck or !deck list. Nice, yeah, it's working. So there's just a couple issues with that deck list. There's 2 Wall of Roots and 2 Wall of Blossoms. There should only be one of each. I might go over the deck I'm playing tonight later, but I'm going to go over on these decks I have in front of me first, just because they're easier to lay out and talk about. Have them right in front of me in a nice, easy format. I'll zoom in a bit more, I guess. That'll make it easier to see. Yeah, so this is Scape Shift. This is a more it's a hybrid combo deck between combo and control, but this one is definitely more slanted towards combo than control. The just rug version is pretty much in the middle, but the 4-color version definitely slides more to control, just because you have access to a lot more tutors. Like, I get to play Demonic Tutor that the rug version doesn't play. I get to play Clutch of the Undercity that the rug version doesn't play. I get to play Dark Petition and Bring to Light. So that's an additional 4 tutors for Scape Shift. So it just enables you to play a more streamlined game plan. Either tutoring for Madcap Experiment if you think that's a game-winning play, or just tutoring up Scape Shift once you have enough lands in play to win. So in the early game, you're looking to do two things. You want to control the board. Three things. You want to control the board first and foremost. You want to ramp second most, and third most you want to find Scape Shift. This deck has enough ways to find Scape Shift that you'll often use your early tutors to accomplish the first 2 things. Like, I'll often spend a Mystical Tutor to find a Skyshroud Claim, or a Demonic Tutor to find a Skyshroud Claim, and just trust that my deck will help me find Scape Shift in the next couple of turns after that. Then in the mid game, you're really looking to either get some card advantage or like get to your 7th or 8th land and cast Scape Shift. Again, it depends a bit on the matchup, but hey Noel, good to see you. Thanks for joining the stream. Top 16 competitor, day 2 Pro Tour competitor Noel Robin in the chat. Yeah, so in the mid game, you're really looking to find Scape Shift and make sure you hit your 7th or 8th land. Hey Parks, how's it going? And then in the late game, you're really just looking to cast Scape Shift either with disruption or without, depending on the matchup. So the deck is really streamlined. It's got a few mass removal spells in Bonfire, Subterranean Tremors, and Toxic Deluge. The reason I went for these ones is either their cheapness, Bonfire can deal with planeswalkers, which is often an issue for this deck. And Subterranean Tremors can deal with artifacts. And because of all your tutors, it's not super difficult to get whichever one you need at the time. So having sort of a suite of like silver bullet sweepers is nice, I've found. Madcap Experiment also does a similar job of stopping aggression if you think they won't be able to deal with it. It's a little more risky, but also has the higher upside of potentially also just winning you the game with the 8/8. Oh, hey Jordan, thanks for tuning in. We'll have to jam on Magic Online sometime. Yeah, this is a deck that would definitely play personal tutor at 0. I don't think it makes the deck too good. It's another top of the deck tutor, which is definitely the worst kind of tutor. Then, like, I'd much rather have another Transmute 4 spell in this deck than personal tutor in this deck. Yeah, shift is exciting. Hermitat Hermit ATHS. Oh, I know who that is now. Former Highlander champion Adam Thorne. Apparently a Hearthstone player. How's it going, Adam? So yeah, the reason you'll see some of the silver bullets in this deck is because of the density of tutors you have. And yeah, I really like this deck. You play snow basics only to allow you to play into the north, just because having 2 mana ramp spells I find so important in the deck. It's always your best play. You'll almost always play a 2 mana ramp spell over holding up a counter spell or playing a Jace. Playing a Search for Azcanta is close. It depends on the matchup, but yeah, you almost always want to just jam 2 mana counter spell or 2 mana ramp spell on turn 2 and then go from there. The 3s are often either more ramp spells or just value cards. Like Tireless Tracker is really good in the deck with all the ramp spells. I think I'm full on points. These decks are a little out of date. I built them in about the middle of last year, so some of the points changes have been a little funky. So Mystical Tutor's 2 points. No more there. Then Demonic is 3, so we're up to 5. Intuition is 1, that's up to 6. Gifts Ungiven is 2, that's up to 8. And then Dig is another 1, that's up to 9. So it looks like we are not full on points. So I'd probably add a Spell Seeker to this deck. Yeah, that's a good plan. I think I was planning to, but when I first tried to build the deck, Spell Seeker was out. Yeah, Spell Seeker's 1. Spell Seeker was out in paper, but it wasn't in treasure chests on Magic Online yet. And I could like search for it and add it to my deck, but I like couldn't buy it from a bot. Like, it was in the client, but it wasn't gettable yet. I had a pretty frustrating discussion with one of the service reps because like I didn't understand why I couldn't get the card. Took some searching, and they didn't tell me that, like, they weren't just like, oh, you can't, like, the card isn't in the client yet. They were like, oh, that's weird, haven't seen that before. And so I thought like it was just some weird error, but that's likely why it's not in the deck. I definitely add Spellseeker to this deck. The ability to get Demonic Tutor or a counterspell or Abrupt Decay or sometimes even Mystical Tutor to set up Bonfire is good enough. Some of the more wacky cards in this deck are the 3 mana ramp spells. I stole these from Liam. I didn't play them for the longest time. Then I saw him playing them and haven't gone back since. It's really, really good. They're both really, really good. Just almost ensuring you hit your seventh land drop. with the density of ramp and lands in this deck. You're still playing a lot of lands. You're playing 37, so you're going to hit a lot of your land drops naturally. Yeah, definitely. I would consider Assassin's Trophy over Maelstrom's Pulse, especially because it's spell seekerable. When I built this deck, Assassin's Trophy wasn't out yet, so yeah, that's definitely a change you could make, is Assassin's Trophy over Maelstrom Pulse. Yeah, so some of the weirder cards are the 3-mana ramp spells, Veteran Explorer. I swear by this card. Some of the other Scapeshift pilots haven't been quite as high on it, but I just think that amount of ramp for that cheap of a mana cost is just too good to pass up on this deck, even though it's symmetrical. And I think that this deck is better equipped to utilize the ramp than a lot of other decks. If you have a counterspell in hand, you can often just tutor for lands that let you hold up in a counterspell. If it happens on your turn, you can often cast another ramp spell or a tutor with those lands. It slows down aggression a bit. I'm not a big fan of top DJ Lift. Even though you have a lot of shuffle effects, it's just too slow. It's not what the deck is looking to do. This deck often taps out every turn again, unless you're specifically holding up a counterspell for something, and you just don't have the mana to be sort of messing around with top shenanigans every turn. And yeah, there's also a Madcap Experiment, so we're not allowed to put non-platinum Empyrean artifacts in our deck. That's another great point. How is Liam? Liam's doing really well. He's having fun back out east. Yeah, I talk to him probably at least once or twice a week on Facebook Messenger just to catch up. Miss him a lot. He's a homie. Hopefully you'll be able to check out some of the streams and hang out. I don't think I'd play Personal Tutor over Spellseeker. However, there's a pretty good chance that Personal Tutor is likely going to be 0 in the future, is my guess. So I think we might get to jam Personal Tutor in this deck anyways in a little while, but I just don't think Personal Tutor is good enough as a top of the deck tutor that shows your opponent face up what's going to happen. Limdal's Vault is an all-in combo card, and this isn't an all-in combo deck. Limdal's Vault just has so high deck building constraints. Like, you need to really want to tutor so bad, and you've already filled your deck with so many already bad tutors. Like, I would definitely play Grim Tutor over Limdal's Vault. I would definitely play like Tainted Pact over Limdal's Vault. Even in a deck like this where exiling cards has a lot of diminishing returns because it doesn't necessarily let you kill with Scapeshift anymore. Limdal's Vault just has such a high cost putting it in your deck and being able to, and like casting it. It's bold. Yeah, like if you watch the top 16, like, Ben had a really brutal Limdal's Vault and just couldn't find what he needed and lost the game almost off the back of just that. Yeah, definitely what everyone else, I'll echo what everyone else is saying and agree that Limdal's Vault is like a pretty bottom of the barrel tutor. I wasn't sure it should come off the points list at the time, but I put my money where my mouth was and played it at one point in a few decks, and after that I was just like, no, it needs to come off. That card is just so bad. Every time I cast it, I almost wish I hadn't. It was just really, really bad. What are my top 3 decks that I love playing and always come back to? So I'm sort of an anomaly in that I don't really have decks that I play super regularly. I am known for playing a different deck almost every tournament I played in. Almost every tournament I play in. And so I don't really have decks that I come back to a lot. Decks that I have the most fun are probably the next deck we're going to talk about, High Tide. That's one I also play more than most. Blue White Control, that's another deck I'm known for and play at least a few times a year. And my last one might honestly be Scape Shift. Or maybe White-Green Midrange. I play White-Green Midrange or White-Green X Midrange a fair amount. And I really enjoy both of those strategies as well. But one of the reasons I like this format is because I feel like there's so many different decks you can play. And I'm lucky that my collection enables me to play almost all of those decks. So I really enjoy playing a diversified portfolio of decks. Any more questions on Scape Shift before we move on to talk about High Tide for a bit? Alright, looks like we'll move on and talk about one of my faves. Let's drag these cards back in here. Would I play Venerian Glimmer? Probably not. It depends. Venerian Glimmer is a card I consider a meta card. So for those of you who don't know, Venerian Glimmer's X and a blue for an instant. You get to look at your opponent's hand and take a card with converted mana cost X or less from their hand. So it's a instant speed blue discard spell. And if you thought it was a lot of combo, a lot of control, you could definitely put Venerian Glimmer in Scape Shift. But Scape Shift is another deck where you're tapping out a fair amount, and so I don't know. It's a reasonable card, but definitely a meta card and not a staple. Versus Collective Brutality. I don't think I'd ever cut Collective Brutality for Venerian Glimmer. Maybe if I was pretty sure there was going to be no aggro around, but one of the reasons Collective Brutality is so good is because it's great against combo, but it's like almost always one of the best cards in your deck against aggro, because you can kill a creature and gain 2 life and look at their hand if you want to, and you often have a lot of really clunky cards against aggro, so being able to discard extra cards to gain equity versus aggro is super, super good. What pulls me into a mid-range build to shift over a control variant? So this one's like a combo control more than mid-range control, but like I think if your meta sort of lends itself to being more proactive as opposed to reactive, like this deck doesn't really want to fight other blue decks. It's not going to win the counter wars most often, and you don't have you have some redundancy, but it's hard to overload their counter spells. You need a pretty good draw to do so, and you're sort of throwing cards away to gain a mana advantage in the form of ramp spells. Like you're essentially discarding cards to gain a mana advantage, and if the blue deck has hard counter spells, that basically doesn't matter in that matchup. So if you're playing against a lot of blue decks, you could cut down on some of the ramp spells, like cut the 3 mana ramp spells, cut Into the North, cut some of the worse 2 mana ramp spells, and just play like more creatures or more answers. Like you could play like Keranos and Thrun and just like more mid-rangey planeswalkers. Like could put in some Garrux or like Chandra, Torch of Defiance, things like that, and just try to like win a more mid-rangey game and have access to Scape Shift. That's what I think on mid-range versus control shift. Fast Bond and Scape Shift. I don't love Fast Bond and Scape Shift. It has potential, but you really just often don't want to pay the life, and you're often like it often takes a number of turns in order to ramp and set up and tutor for Scape Shift and be able to cast Scape Shift anyways. Like, you often just need to hit enough draw steps to have a density of cards to have done all those things, and you're often, I don't know how often Fast Bond is actually accelerating your game plan, because it doesn't give you more draw steps to just draw naturally pieces that you need. Have I ever played Jund Shift? No, Noel, I haven't. That's I'll leave that one to you. Yeah, so I wouldn't play this deck if there's a ton of blue decks running around. It's a reasonable choice if there's a bunch of other hybrid combo decks around. I really like this deck in a hybrid combo meta. It's pretty good against aggro because you have a bunch of the life gain creatures. Well, less so than the rug version, but you still have Courser. You can put in Kitchen Finks if you want. And it's really, this deck really preys on mid-range decks. Is its best matchup. All right, gonna actually move on to High Tide now. Talk about casting lots of spells. So this is what I played at the GP Van tournament. I can't remember if it was exactly this list or it was just close. I think I had Mission Briefing in that deck. That's a new card that gets in here for sure. I can't remember what I cut. Yeah, I can't remember, but it's very close to. Yeah, I've experimented with Exploration. I like Exploration better than Fast Bond in Scape Shift. Honestly, I think that's likely doing a similar thing. Like, I doubt by turn 2 you're playing more than 2 extra lands anyways, but and the lack of damage you're taking from it, I think, makes Exploration a better card. Yeah, there are a couple pricey ones in High Tide, unfortunately. Although Candle's not super necessary to play the deck. Twister also not necessary, though better than Candle, but. And if you want to get them on Moto, I think these cards combined are like maybe 2 tickets. So, yeah, that's one thing I noticed when buying it on Magic Online, is that a lot of the cards I thought would be the most expensive are the least expensive. Like Candelabra's like under a ticket. I think Time Twister's maybe a ticket or a ticket and a half. So like a lot of the cards you never get to play with in paper are super attainable in Magic Online, which is pretty cool. So this is a all-in combo deck. You're basically only ever winning with combo. I'll get to that question at the end, Narovi. If you remind to ask me at the end, I'm just gonna run through what the deck does and sort of its main game plans, and we'll take some questions at the end. Yeah, so this deck just wants to sculpt its hand and has some minor disruption for the early game. It has like Remand, Mana Leak, a couple bounce spells. You just want to try to live as long as you can before you have to go off. It's often incorrect to try to go off earlier. Just because having more cards is almost always better for this deck. Even against blue decks, your random cards are often better than their random cards. Yeah, this Mana Leak has always been gold for me. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because it's a full art version, but yeah. So you just want to buy as much time as possible, and then the typical combination of cards you're looking for is High Tide plus at least 4 lands plus Time Spiral, and that's often good enough to win. However, you can have additional things, like you can have more untappers to float more mana with Time Spiral, or if you have a way to rebuy High Tide like Snapcaster Mage or Flood, that can often get you there safer as well. Another way to win the game without having time spiral is if you have 6 lands in play, or you're able to generate 12 mana with your lands. Palancron plus and one of the X spells wins. So we have Blue Sun Zenith, and I think we have Brain Geyser as well, maybe. Alright, we don't have Brain Geyser in this one. Sometimes I'll play Brain Geyser because you can find out with Muddle the Mixture. And you'll often have used your Demonic Tutor beforehand, so you don't necessarily have the line of transmuting for Demonic Tutor to get Blue Sun Zenith. Although, one of the reasons you'll go for the Palancron line over a Tendrils line is that you don't always have access to black mana. And this deck can definitely win without black mana. Sentinel Tower and Aetherflux Reservoir have both done a really good job of allowing the deck to do that. I think Sentinel Tower is like one of the best High Tide cards printed in years. It's super exciting. I've won a bunch of games just with like cantripping and Sentinel Towering people, and you can often turn into a control deck that just chains cantrips in a turn, hits land drops, and then wins just by nickel and diming your opponent. Like, well, it's not even nickel and diming. Like, if you cast 3 cantrips in a turn, that's 6 damage. That's more than a quarter of their life total. But I won a game at the GP without casting High Tide, just by Sentinel Towering my opponent, which was pretty exciting. Yeah, but this deck is super difficult to play because it's not a linear combo deck. So you really need to know the deck super well. You need to know what your outs are at all times. You need to have there's some wacky lines. Like, there was a game at the GP where I had Mystical Teachings and Mystical Tutor in my hand, and I think 5 lands, and I had to Mystical Teachings for High Tide, and in my upkeep Mystical Tutor for Time Spiral, which is a sort of an unintuitive play. Like, Mystical Tutor almost always just gets High Tide, so it's hard to think about it getting anything else. So sequencing your tutors is really important, and just like knowing all the lines in the deck is super important. And even I miss lines a fair amount. This deck is super hard to play optimally, but it's super rewarding if you can play it optimally. I actually think this deck is one of the better decks in the format if played well, and yeah, super fun to play. All right, what questions do we have? So, replacements for Candelabra and Twister. So as a replacement for Twister, you could play Memory Jar, although if you have a bunch of aggro in your meta, I would not play Memory Jar. I'd just put in like another draw spell, whatever your favorite draw spell might be. And in terms of Candelabra, then I would also cut Trinket Mage. And then I might put in something like Augur Bolus, and maybe just like another cantrip card, like Peak. That's a reasonable option. But yeah, you can definitely play this deck without Time Twister and Candelabra. Neither of them are core to the deck at all. Yeah, hopefully the Red Trinket, this is a sign of more streams. I'm on reading week this week, and my partner's away for the week, so it seems like a good week for me to fire off a few more streams. I don't know exactly what my schedule is going to be just yet. I still need to talk with them and figure out when the best time for me to stream is, but I'm hoping to fire off some more streams somewhat regularly. I might take a week off here or there to study because I'm in school right now, but I'm hoping to make it a more regular thing. More questions about High Tide. What do you find that High Tide combo and Canlander is more suited to beat over 4 to 5 color Storm? Alright, so these decks actually have a lot different matchups. I think Storm is much better against the linear aggressive decks because it's a faster combo deck. So High Tide usually wins on turn 5 or 6. Storm usually wins on turns 3 to 5. I'd say it averages out to turn 4, but they have some turn 3s, but they'll miss some turn 4s as well. So Storm is at least a full turn faster than High Tide, which makes it better against decks like Mono Red, decks like Red Green Aggro, decks like Goblins. Whereas High Tide is much better at beating. It's much better at facing disruption, both blue and black, than the Storm deck is. Like, it has less dead cards. Like, it doesn't play silences or hand attack spells. Where if you get hand attacked, you often have a key spell in hand. This deck is so redundant with draw spells and recursion, like Flood of Recollection, Snapcaster Mage. You now get Mission Briefing that now you're just able to you're able to fight through disruption much better, and you also have counter spells to fight back, so you're actually pretty good against the blue decks. You're pretty good against control decks. You can fight a pretty blue game against them and often come out on top because they're drawing a lot of dead cards against you. Like, their removal spells are basically dead. Sometimes it'll come up that you can hit a creature with a removal spell in response to like a treachery or something, and that's good enough to stop the High Tide combo going off. But if you it's not too tricky to play around those things if you're aware of the lines available from the High Tide side. So the matchups are actually quite different, I'd say. And that High Tide is better against slower decks. It's like much more assured in its victory, but it takes a bit longer to get there. Have I tested Flash of Insight, and if so, is it too much anti-synergy with Will? Yeah, I don't love Flash of Insight. It digs you really deep, but it doesn't get you that many cards. I just don't think it's worthwhile enough. It saw a lot of play really early on in the High Tide builds, but I have never been a huge fan of it personally. Windfall or Twister? Yeah, this deck doesn't really want to just cast Time Twister super early. You're not ramping or anything, so you're often only casting it as your last card in hand or second last card in hand, sort of as a bait spell. And you're often waiting for the combo turn to cast your draw sevens, because you are typically planning to win with a Storm card. Tendrils, you probably win with Tendrils 70%. I'm not counting infinite Palinchron loops. I'm counting that as its own win con. So storm count often matters, although this deck is pretty good at churning up the storm count pretty high. But sometimes it turns out you're only getting close to Xaxes, so saving your spells for the combo turn is often really important. What do I think? Shimmer a possibility? Yeah, that's a card that could definitely get in this deck. It's almost certainly better than Peer Through Depths. I've been really close to cutting this card a lot of times. Just hitting your land drops is really important in this deck, and although this card digs 5 for an instant or sorcery, which is really good, the inability of it to hit a land has cost me a few games in my time. So I've been looking for an excuse to cut this card, so Shimmer might get in over Peer Through Depths. I don't know if I'm streaming 8 hours a day, Jordan. Not that degenerate yet. Or I guess I used to be, but yeah, not anymore. And not in the near future, at least. Yeah, I guess I might try to pull up my current deck on the just on an internet browser and see if we can talk about this one a bit. It's not going to be quite as nice to look at as the Magic Online ones, but for sure, I'm happy to go off topic now. I'm sort of done talking about all the decks I have, so if you guys have any off topic questions, please feel free to fire them off. So more budget version of Paradox Academy. A lot of lists for Go Trophy Mage. Gets several combo pieces. Yeah, it's just a little slow. Is my guess is why people don't play it. Uh, for 3 mana, just being a tutor for something that may or may not be useful, likely isn't good enough of like often enough to make it worthwhile of an inclusion. Like, although it does get rings and staff and basalt monolith, which are all potential cards you want to be able to win the game. The deck's primary game plan, at least I found when I've played it, is to just try to get a huge amount of mana and then cast a draw 7. So it doesn't really fit with that game plan really well, because unless you have 6 mana and you're able to deploy it plus the rock it gets in the same turn, which is the sort of default case for it, like you don't have a missing piece of a combo that is tutorable with Trophy Mage. The default case is you're just going to go get more mana, and I don't think it's good enough in that default case to warrant inclusion, if that makes sense to you. So if nobody has any more questions about any of the decks I've talked about, I'm going to bring up the deck I'm going to play tonight and talk about that a bit, because I'm pretty excited about this one. Got a few new cards I'm trying out. Got a few cards I don't play very often that I'm trying out. So, yeah, let's try this one. All right. Can everybody see that all right? So I'm sorry this isn't as nice to look at as the Magic Online client. Never thought I'd say that, but here we are. So this is a Bant sort of value mid-range deck. Parks, if you're still here, pay attention. So the base of the deck is a bunch of value creatures and a lot of clone effects. It's got a lot of value creatures like it's got the draw card walls, it's got Voice of Resurgence, Stoneforge Mystic. Mare of Averbrook is another interesting card that doesn't see much play that I'm excited to try out in this deck, because I think if I'm able to accelerate into Mare of Averbrook with a Mox and then clone it on turn 2, that's potentially going to be a pretty game-winning play, because the cloned version of the flipped Mare will never flip back, and so having the flipped version of Mare is pretty exciting. A play that I'm looking forward to making if I'm able to. A card I'm trying out tonight is Deputy of Detention. I haven't had a chance to play that one yet, so I'm playing it alongside Palace Jailer. I don't normally play the Fiend Hunter type of effects in this deck. But I'm playing this because I'm hoping it's going to be a bit better against the more unfair decks, like being able to take artifacts or enchantments, or maybe snag a Birthing Pod or something like that out of a pod deck. So, which one? Oh, Chameleon Colossus. I really think this card is underplayed right now. There's a lot of the mid-range decks are favoring Grixis right now, and I think it's really hard for the mid-range decks to deal with it. A lot of their bigger creatures are black. Baleful Strix can't block it, so I think it's just an underplayed card, and it's another good clone target, because it's hard. One of the things you really don't want in this deck is if you only have one creature on board and you cast a clone, you really don't want your creature to get removed in response. So having creatures that are sort of naturally resistant to removal is really important. And so this has both 4 toughness and protection from a relevant color. So I'm going to be able to cast clones in a lot of matchups and feel fairly certain that this creature isn't going to get removed in response to my clone effect. Another reason I'm playing Kira Great Glass Spinner is for that reason as well. Exactly, yeah. It's going to be difficult for non-white decks to remove it. Some other more underplayed cards I'm playing. Bramble Sovereign, one of my faves. Yeah, you'll see a lot of parallels between this deck and the Bant Flicker deck. Uh, I'm sort of interested to see which one I think is more powerful. I have a feeling I'm actually going to think this one is more powerful, but I'll I'll have to test it out and see. I've played the Bant Blink deck a bunch and it was better than I thought, so I have a little higher expectations for this deck because it's a pretty similar shell, but we'll have to see. I think this deck is going to absolutely beat up on aggro decks, so I'm excited for that. Excuse me. Is New Dovin good in these kind of Bant decks? That would be interesting to try. I haven't tried it. I do think it's a powerful card. Definitely worth trying. Maybe I'll try it in my next iteration of the deck. Is there a way to get a deck list? Yeah, if you type hashtag deck or hashtag deck list in the chat, you'll be taken to this page, and then you can download it or do what you will from there. But there is a way to get that deck list. I'm gonna try to be good about putting all my decks into my Stream Decker, which is down in a panel below the channel. So if you're interested in any of the decks we've talked about today, there's lists for all of those. Sorry, not hashtag, exclamation mark. My mistake. Sorry, Freddy. That's my bad. It depends, Noel, because I can't clone Thrun. Thrun's in my maybe pile, but didn't quite make it in just because yeah, Thrun can't be cloned, unfortunately. Yeah, this is another Archon deck I'm excited for. I'm really looking forward to sticking an Archon and then firing off one or two clones and just locking off half of the spells in Magic. Sure, Sakashima can do it, you're right, but we're not playing that one. I probably should be, but a few other new cards I'm trying. Mesmerizing Benthid. I played this card in a food chain deck I was playing last week, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's an absolute house against aggressive decks, and the 4 power clocks in pretty quickly, and just giving multiple bodies are pretty good. So the points in this deck are mostly fast mana. We're going for 2 Moxes, green and white. These are just where I want my early mana to be. I don't have too many early blue plays. I do have a bunch of double blue spells later on, but I'm playing one of the filter lands and a good number of blue sources, so I'm hoping to be able to hit double blue when I need it. So that's 6 points worth of Moxes, 2 points in Agite. Then we got 1 point worth of Stoneforge Mystic, and 1 point worth of True Name Nemesis, which brings us to 10. Yeah, Phantasmal Image and Mesmerizing Benthid is hot because the image is an illusion, so they're just forever hexproof at that point, which is pretty sweet. Is there benefits playing this over a Blink style? So that's sort of what I'm trying to figure out, Parks, is that I want to experiment and see which I think is better, because I think like the clones are in a vacuum more powerful, just because you're getting an additional body as well as the enter the battlefield effect. But the blink deck looks a little leaner to me, like it's a little less clunky. Like if you get Wrath, all the clones do nothing, which I guess all the blink spells do nothing, but some of them dodge Wraths. So I think it's pretty similar, but I'm leaning towards this one being better, but I'm not sure yet. That's why I'm looking to test them both. Not related to this deck, have I made an allies deck? No, I haven't. I don't normally play tribal decks. I'm not known for that. I don't know if Allies is really there as a tribe yet. Uh, yeah, I haven't looked too far into it. I think I've heard Ben talking about it, but he hasn't played it, or maybe he did play it. I can't remember. Ben might have played it. If you ask Ben on Twitter, he might be able to help you out there. This list seems better versus other mid range and aggro. Blink is generally better versus control. I'm not certain that's true either. Just because control is going to be able to blow out the blink spells more often as well. But, oh, I missed a bunch of follows. I'm sorry. I think I got to the G Money 041. So Moneybag Stored, thanks for the follow. Miss Elfia, thanks for the follow. Cardboard Confrontation, that's Jordan, thanks for the follow. Conjugatio, thanks for the follow. Red Trinket 1, Were Walrus 99, and Mint Chalk Dublin. Thanks all for following. I'm hoping to fire off some more streams later this week, so do follow if you want to be notified of when I'm streaming. I'm going to try to shout it out on my Twitter as well. So if you follow me there, you'll be notified. One thing I'm going to try to add to my sort of area below my stream is my tapped out account, which is another really good source for Highlander decks. So look for that in the near future. Yeah, I do play on MTGO. I actually posted in the Discord looking to jam some sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up. I posted in the Discord group looking to jam some MTGO games, which is I was hoping to play one on stream here right now, but couldn't find an opponent. I'll try to set one up for next time, and then we'll be able to have a more action-filled stream as opposed to me just talking at you the whole time. Although I like this too. I really like the theoretical side of Magic, so I really like having like discussions about decks and theoreticals and those types of things. Curious on your opinion on a deck I plan to bring tonight if you have a sec. Sure, Were Walrus. You can post a link here in the chat, and I'll look at it. Is Body Double worth playing? I thought about Body Double. I just don't think it's reliable enough in this deck because ideally my creatures aren't dying. It's not a realistic thought, but I just have no good way to control of what Body Double can copy, and ideally my best creatures are going to be in play if my game plan's going according to plan. So I decided not to play Body Double. Oh yeah, the Living Death win with the cycling deck. I definitely didn't think I was winning a match with that one. Sorry for the spoilers if you haven't caught the latest Friday night paper fight. But we played this last Friday, so 3 days ago, and I managed to take down a match with cycling in Highlander. We were all playing meme decks, though. I don't know how memey Surge and Alex's deck were. Surge managed to sneak a meme Jace the Mind Sculptor in his Enchantress deck, which maybe I'm not up on all the memes. I don't claim to be knowledgeable about memes, but that doesn't seem like a meme to me. I don't know. And Alex just played a deck that could win on turn 2, so you know what's happened. I like Magus of the Will in mono black control quite a bit. I think the 3/3 body is just a reasonable body against aggressive decks, and I think against mid-range and control decks that later on in the game, especially in a deck like that that makes a ton of mana, that I really like it. I think it can get a lot of advantage from just one card, which is definitely what that style of deck is looking to do. Yeah, Noel, good call. I actually meant to put Vanifar in here, but forgot. So I'm gonna need to cut something for Vanifar. All right, chat, help me find a cut for Vanifar. Uh, yeah, I never mind playing against Bruise Benzel. Uh, my MTGO name is the same as my name here, JRH White. So add me up on Magic Online, and we can figure it out next time. Yeah, Mystic Snake is probably a good cut. I just have a lot of nostalgia for this card and wanted to play it, so I might look to find another one, but that's probably a good suggestion, Lord Huntington. Yeah. It's one of those, you just have cards you want to play. You probably shouldn't, but definitely one of those. Yeah, that Alex's deck was real good. It was just an error when I was inputting the deck. It's supposed to have 1 and 1. I will edit it I could just edit it now, I guess. 1. Update. There we go. That should be better. Yeah, Keeper of the Keys is another really spicy one. As far as I'm aware, I'm basically the only one who plays this card. I have killed a lot of people with it. They look at it, they're like, oh, that card's sweet, but then they don't play it and they keep dying to it. So, yeah. When I play these style of decks, I have a few cards that I want to play just because they don't get played very much, and like they're powerful cards. And I think one of the things that happens in Magic the most is people just ignore cards because they're not played, and therefore they think they're not playable. And one of the things I try to do is that when I deck build is to include those cards every so often just to get an idea of what I think of them, and that's sometimes how I am able to find edges, is that I'm able to I like have enough card knowledge, or I look deep enough and gather that I find the cards that people aren't playing and that are still powerful, and then I'm able to win games with them just because other people count them as unplayable. Knight of the Reliquary, worth a cut. I just played it because it's a powerful card, but yeah, it's definitely cuttable in this deck. So we have Knight is cuttable, Mystic Snake is cuttable. I don't think I'm gonna cut Mare of Averbrook. Oh yeah, Duskwatch Recruiter is a pretty good one too. You're right. Yeah, you're right. We could cut Elves of Deep Shadow. That's what I'll do. I'll cut Elves of Deep Shadow for Vannifar. I have a few Moxes to play, so hopefully we can skip up the curve fairly reliable with the mana dorks we have, and then the Moxes. So let's try that. All right, let's edit this. Where are you? Elves of Deep Shadow cut. Vanif. Is there only one N? Oh, she's Prime Speaker, right? Prime Speaker. I'm trying not to type too much because I have a mechanical keyboard, and I'm sure it's annoying to listen to on the stream. Yeah, Vezin. This is the list I'm playing tonight. It's a Bant clones deck. It's really similar to the Bant Blink deck, but instead of Blink effects, we're looking to clone some of our higher value creatures. So we have a few new cards. We have Deputy of Detention, Biogenic Ooze, Vannifar of the Prime Speaking variety. And then we're looking to clone like Deranged Hermit. That probably wins us a game. Or Verdurous Gearhulk. That's pretty good at winning if you clone a... Yeah, I'm a big advocate of Stifle. I think it's a better card than people give it credit for, and I think having access to stifles that are less narrow than just having actual stifle in your deck is great. So I'm really excited to be able to play this card because it's exactly the kind of thing this deck wants. Definitely high getcha potential in this deck because my opponents definitely won't expect a stifle out of it. And I decided to include Path and Swords just to not be completely cold to my opponent's creatures. I do have Deputy and Palace Jailer as well. And so this deck could be hashtag the jail is full as well as Blink. I doubt I'm going to get up to 6. That seemed pretty legendary, but got a few more follows I'm going to shout out. Judge Kyle, thanks for following. Knowles, thanks for following. And Oogie Dog, thanks for following. As I mentioned before, I'm looking to stream a bunch this week in particular. I don't have my schedule set yet, but I'm on reading week and my partner's away all week, so might get a few good streams in. I'll try to set up some MTGO matches for next time, and I'm also probably gonna end up streaming some amount of Arena as well. I have some spicy standard decks on there. My Jamps Unlimited. I've been having a lot of fun with Arena. It basically got me back into playing lots of standard, so gonna share that with y'all as well. Yeah, the Phantasmal Image plus the Octopus is a powerful combination because it's an illusion. It cares about illusions, and then the Phantasmal Image is always an illusion, so it's just perma hexproof. Bad matchups with this deck is likely the same as Bant Blink, which is all in combo decks. I think this deck is faster than Bant Blink, so it makes it a little better. I think against all in combo, we might be able to win on turn 5 or 6 with a good aggressive draw. So never know, that might be good enough to get there. But sweet Pat, thanks for the follow. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, hopefully we're able to get some people with this deck. I'm excited to play it. I think I'm going to wind down in about 20 minutes or so. Make sure I have enough time to eat before I get there. And it's election night, so we're going to vote on the new council tonight. So we got to get there a little early to get that all going. If you're just tuning in and you want to see any of the decks we've talked about today, there should be a panel down below the stream. That's the Stream Decker panel. If you click the Load Decks button, we talked about all the decks that I've been playing on Magic Online over the past few months, and the deck I'm playing tonight as well, which I don't have this one on Magic Online yet, but if it's fun, I might look to pick up the pieces I'm missing. Thanks. Yeah, I've been on the council for a while, and I have a few other things going on, so I wouldn't be too choked if I missed out this time. Realistically, everyone that's running knows the format super well and has reasonable ideas. So yeah, I've been playing a bit of Singleton on Arena, but I've mostly been playing Standard. Yeah, I'm excited to play some more with it though. So one time this week we might try a Singleton stream. I have a pretty decent collection on Arena, so we should be able to brew up some spicy decks. Yeah, but basically one of the great things about this community is that, like, almost no matter who makes the council within a bit of reason, that the format's gonna continue to be in great hands and continue to be my favorite format, whether I'm the one shaping it or I have a hand in shaping it or it's left to left to other people. There have been a few people talking about fast bond to 0. I still do not support the idea. I don't think it leads to a healthier, more fun format, and I don't think that it really helps any decks that much. Like, I don't think fast bond to 0 like helps lands really at all. Like, the best lands decks have started not even playing fast bond, so I don't know about that, Pat. Like, both Robin and Jonah seem to be interested, but yeah, I think so, at least. Maybe they're joking and it went over my head, but oh, it's teasing me. It's teasing me, not Surge. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. We all love Surge here. He's a homie. Loves fast bond a little too much. The most anguished scream I've ever heard in my life was when I mental misstepped his turn 1 fast bond. He was like so excited to keep his hand, and he was on the play, and he just slammed fast bond and almost put a second land into play, and I was like, I have a response. Pay 2 life. And Surge's eyes just went really wide, and then I had the misstep. Yeah, he wasn't super pleased on that one. Yeah, winning to losing with 2 life for sure. That happened a few times. The most recent one was when I was playing an Is It Blitz deck, which is like a aggro blue-red spells matter deck. It was playing a lot of the prowess creatures and like Thing in the Ice, things like that. And my opponent was at 14. I attacked in with both the 1/2 prowess creatures, Monastery Swiftspear and Soulscar Mage. And before attacking, I had cast Forked Bolt to put my opponent to 12. And they had creatures I could have killed. Like, they had a Llanowar Elves, which I knew they didn't want to block with, and a Duskwatch Recruiter, which was unflipped. So my Forked Bolt could have killed either of their creatures. And then they said no blocks, and I excitedly fired off a Lightning Bolt to put them to 9, and then a Gut Shot to put them to 8. And then I paid 2 life with the Gut Shot, obviously, and then my creatures dealt the last 8 points of damage. Yeah, I told this one on North 100, but I'm still really excited about that play. I tanked a while because I was like, I could just kill their creatures, but I knew they were on Pattern Rector, and they had Rector in hand, so it would have been really hard for me to win the game if I wasn't winning on this turn. So, is Restore Balance the best thing you can do at instant speed with Electro Dominance? Maybe. I don't know if it's reliable enough to do it in Highlander, because there's only a few ways that let you cheat the mana costs, but not too many people are playing Aristocrats right now. I thought about sleeving it up tonight, so that's a deck I'm gonna play in the near future, so I might look to try to build up my new list and share it on a stream sometime this week. I don't think anybody's playing it now. Kevin Bosta, one of the top 16 competitors, was talking about jamming with it, but he just came back from a long weekend down at the RPTQ, so I don't know if he's gonna be playing or not. I don't have a list handy, but if you tweet at me, I can get you one sometime this week. Oof, yeah, I heard about that one, Pat. The misstep, then Spell Snare on the draw. That's brutal. I think Electro Dominance is a reasonable card to put into Scapeshift. It seems like the kind of thing you're looking for in that deck. I know a few of the players who have tried it and thought it was pretty good. I don't think it's the most unreasonable card to play in Blue Moon either. Just like having a removal spell and then casting a draw spell or something else can be pretty good. Oh no, that's not when you want to cast Madcap. Yeah, so I think Electrodominance is going to be a better card once more people try it. I think it's better than people think it is right now. I think the cheating on mana is so powerful in Eternal formats, and it allows you to potentially cheat on a bunch of mana or just casting restrictions like on the free spells. So it's harder to do it with the free spells just because like the cost of putting them in your deck is pretty high. You really want to reliably be able to cheat them out, and there's only so many ways to do that. But I think just being able to cast 2 spells in one turn for free is really good. Yeah, especially getting around the casting restrictions as well. Like in Blue Moon, I've seen somebody put in a back to basics or a Blood Moon, and that's really good. Yeah, I think Expansion Explosion is a really good card. I've been playing that one a bunch in Highlander, and I've really liked it. I think Expansion is just a really underrated effect. It's sort of like what I was talking about earlier with Stifle. You don't necessarily want to include a card that only does that, because it's a little too narrow at that point, even though it's powerful when it comes off. But being able to put it onto a better default case is absolutely great, and I've been super excited with that card. There's a chance I might play Lucky Charms. Hi Pinball Witch, thanks for stopping by. There's a chance, but not likely. It's not really my style. I think I'm short a couple of the charms as well, but yeah, I not really my thing. So possible, but probably unlikely. I just have so many decks I'd wanna play, that it's hard to decide which one I'd get to play. 3 plus color decks are playable without OG dual lands. It depends on your meta a bit, and exactly which deck you're playing. Like you can compensate for it by putting a bit more life gain in your deck, or by having other mana fixing, but it's difficult to, like, it will cost you'll lose some percentage points, but a lot of the time it won't matter, basically. Electrodominance, kind of add red kicker to any card that deals damage. Yeah, that is a good way of looking at it. It is kind of like that, exactly. Brewing a cube based on the Lucky Charms style. Oh yeah, any card with choose. That was Liam's criteria. So that would be a crazy cube. Super hard to draft because your cards are just able to do so many different things. Yeah, Pat, but one thing to consider is that this card lets you cheat on the timing as well. So you're able to cast like cards that wouldn't necessarily be able to be at instant speed, like letting Blue Moon resolve a Electrodominance end step and then put a Planeswalker into play is super great. Or like it allows Scapeshift to cast Scapeshift at instant speed, which is insane. It allows, I think getting around the timing restriction is one of the best parts of that card. Be interested to think about what you think about that aspect of it. What's a good grindy mid-range deck at the moment? Grindy mid-range. It seems like people are favoring Bug right now. Both Pat in the chat and Ben Wheeler have been playing Bug, mostly value deck. that does have a combo, but it's not a combo deck by any means. I would certainly call it a mid-range deck. That seems to be the in favor mid-range deck right now. It definitely has some grindy games. Yeah, definitely. I think the instant speed on Electro Dominance is really important. The Rock hasn't been getting played that much right now. I've been thinking about bringing my more creature centric version somewhat soon, but Allison hasn't been playing that much Highlander recently, and she's the main proponent of that deck. Most other people haven't. Most other people don't play it, so hasn't been seeing played that much. Calm down in the chat, boys. Nolan, Pat, known ham sandwiches. You won the biggest, one of the biggest tournaments you've ever won with the Rock, Noel. What are you talking about? Noel won a real whiteboarded time walk from me playing the Rock. Yeah, Noel knows a thing or two about the Rock, but he's a salty old man now. Has a kid. No, he's a great Magic player, but I wouldn't say never play the Rock. It's still a good deck. It's just doesn't necessarily have as many options as some of the other decks. Super small, just play control, food chain. Mono red. If you want to punish those decks, bring mono red. You will light them up. Big Red's still a good deck as well. I lost to it a couple weeks ago. I haven't played it super recently, but yeah, definitely still a viable deck. It's another one of those fast mana decks. If you're on the Facebook group, Medium Red has been the new hotness right now, which is just doesn't go as high as 6. I don't think there are any 6s, but it plays all the 5s, and it plays just the super fast mana. Like, it doesn't play rocks, but it plays like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Mox, etc. Just to accelerate into 4s and 5s. Yeah, Goblins is a super good entry point into the format. Really cheap. Lots of the cards are older, so if you have a store that's been around for a while, they'll probably have a lot of the pieces already. So that's definitely a good entry point. That's better, Noel. Yeah, I sort of got to the same point at the Rock where I played it and it felt like either I won super hard or my opponent, or I did nothing, and it didn't give me a lot of options to smooth my draws. It feels like a deck that really needs blue to me. Just like the lack of card selection, card advantage in the and actual card advantage in the deck, not just gaining virtual card advantage with planeswalkers, is lacking to me. And I think I lost a few games just to variance, which, you know, it happens, it sucks, but it really feels like you can do nothing when you're losing with the Rock. Yeah, Pat's right. There, even with the linear decks, learning like how to beat specific things, like how to get around things. Some crazy lines are often the best part of this format, because they don't happen anywhere else, and you have lines in this format that are like solely exist in this format because of the singleton nature. So, well, Diabetic Madness and O'Lear, thanks for the follows. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for hanging out. It's been a super good stream. I think we've been around 40 viewers the whole time, which smashes my old records. So thanks a lot. Noel, you take that back. This is not a Miri's Guile is great stream. Miri's Guile is stone unplayable, except in Enchantress. Yeah. This has been a super fun stream, though. I've had a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to doing it again, especially when I'm able to set up some matches. Some people have messaged me and told me to message them next time for some games. So I'll definitely do that. Get at least one of them. Make sure at least one of them is free and set up some matches so we can go through. I'll let you guys vote on which deck you want me to play, and we'll jam some matches on Magic Online. I'm looking to play mostly Canadian Highlander and focus as much as I can on Canadian Highlander, but I'm likely going to end up playing some Arena on stream as well. So hopefully you guys like the variety, but definitely give me some feedback. I just want to stream what people want to see. So although I know there's lots of people streaming Standard, and I'm probably the only one streaming Canadian Highlander. So I don't have any Hellrider decks on Magic Online. Yeah, you definitely get some weird lines in Limited too. It's sort of like similar to Canadian Highlander, where you, outside of Limited, you never see those cards interact just because they're not quite there for Constructed. So Standard Canlander is not super doable, but I'm definitely gonna jam some singleton on Canlander. I might message some people and see if they want to set up a dual stream or something and battle from both sides. That would be cool. Yeah, that might have been it. I actually give credit to a different local player other than Liam played it first, but Liam was definitely one of the big proponents of the deck for sure. Yeah, Devastating Dreams is a bold one. For sure. Cyclops, that's a deep one. All right, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here to make sure I have time to eat and get down to Yellow Jacket before the council things start. So thanks again for everyone coming out, and stay tuned for the next stream. This was, I consider, a huge success. Way more viewers than I thought I was gonna get. So I'm definitely excited to try it again. See everybody next time.